for the bees! Strike for the billions of insects buzzing through traffic who brush your arm at sunset. Strike for the charred spruce, maple, and palm trees. Strike for the lungs that desperately search oxygen. Strike for the friends who distribute breathing masks. Strike for the forests covered in white ash. Strike for the ones still standing like ghosts. Strike for the lives stolen by mines, factories, and oil. Damn oil! Strike for the bees! Strike for the bees! Strike for the whales washed ashore. Strike for the missing starfish. Strike for the dolphins who beach themselves and those who try to save them. Strike for the forests of kelp, waving goodbye, cooked alive. Strike for the oceans nuked by Fukushima. Strike for the ravens calling your name. Strike for the coral, the mussels, the clams. Strike while it's still cool enough to think. Strike for the bees! Strike for the bees! Strike for the skin and bone polar bears. Strike for the crickets no longer singing at night. Strike for the force-fed hogs, cattle, chickens crying for freedom, and those who try to free them. Strike for the salmon, the trout struggling to breathe. Strike for the streams, brooks, and rivers run dry. Strike for the glaciers gone. Strike for the unhoused, displaced by war and greed. Damn greed! Strike for the cherry blossoms, still dancing under the moon. Strike for the bees! Strike for the bees! Strike for the waves pounding the shore. Strike for the butterflies. Strike for the rivers reclaiming the land. Strike for those people flooded or burned out. Strike for the homes that were lost. Strike for the neighbors helping neighbors, filling sandbags, fighting fires. Strike for those beaten and jailed for protesting. Strike for those without water to drink. Strike for the bees! Strike for the bees! Strike for the cod, the shark, the frog. Strike for the orphaned foxes. Strike for the deer and caribou running confused. Strike for those dying of hunger. Strike for those dying because of war and genocide. Strike for the sunlight that filters through the leaves. Strike for the breeze that caresses the leaves and shakes their shadows. Strike for the land that is thirsty. Strike for the bees! Strike for the bees! Strike! Strike! Strike!